Hey, before I get into this video, I just want to remind you, I want to let you know that there's a big video coming tonight. It might not be up until like 10 o'clock Central, but you're gonna want to see it. So set your alarms. Ooh boy, I had a video ready to go about EA that's going to get pushed till tomorrow, I think, because new news just dropped about a new bit of legislation that may make loot boxes and predatory microtransactions illegal. That's right. Now, to give you some background, this is not the first time that it has been raised. I believe the last time was a senator in Hawaii or somebody in Hawaii, right around the time that Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2 was released. And EA themselves, we've always known that greed of, in particular, AAA corporations, but honestly, small corporations that produce some of these mobile apps and things like that, that prey on whales, they're just as guilty. It's just we don't know all of their names. They just produce some randomly addictive video game and push microtransactions on people. Now, I am a firm believer that anytime the government gets involved in anything, it gets worse. But this is where we're at. We had hoped that the market would correct. I had hoped that the market would correct itself in that gamers would push back and that they would stop buying these things and they would stop essentially positively reinforcing the behavior of these game developers. But that has not been the case. People are addicted. So video game loot boxes face final boss, written by a true boomer. Social media and video games prey on user addiction, siphoning our kids' attention from the real world and extracting profits from fostering compulsive habits. That's probably not untrue. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri is introducing legislation that seeks to ban exploitative video games industry practices that target children, like loot boxes and pay to win, he announced on Wednesday. Now, it's interesting when you talk about loot boxes because not that long ago, we saw other countries in Europe, and I think Washington State might have put in some stuff in around NBA 2K, in these player packs, which are, in FIFA. For example, EA, I'd be willing to bet. I'm just curious. Let's see what happened to EA stock today. Well, not EAS. I wonder how the video game stock is doing. Let's see, it cratered around 1 o'clock when this news was presented, and it's crept back up, so it's hard to say. But if we zoom out to a month, things have not been good for EA since, look at that, since like my birthday. Since my birthday, it's been nothing but bad news for EA. Anyway, the quote goes, social media and video games prey on user addiction, siphoning our kids' attention from the real world, extracting profits from fostering compulsive habits. No matter the business model's advantage to the tech industry, one thing is clear, that there's no excuse for exploiting children through such practices. Now, I am a big proponent of personal responsibility, so I want to take this moment to say, raise your kids, all right? A day doesn't go by that I don't see a mom and a dad in a restaurant with 2 or 3 kids who all have their own little iPads or their Amazon Fire tablets for kids, just with their faces in these dang things all day long. Raise your kids, right? Your kids aren't opening loot boxes if you aren't giving them your credit card. Your kid isn't playing these exploitative mobile games if you're not giving them an iPad at 7 years old. I don't think it's that ridiculous to accept some personal responsibility, in particular from the parents. If you're going to use the "more children," think of the kids. If you're going to use the kids as a reason for pushing legislation, let's not ignore the blame of the parents who are using these things as babysitters for their kids. When a game is designed for kids, game developers shouldn't be allowed to monetize addiction. Well, I think I agree with the statement, but get rid of kids. I mean, essentially, you have some apps that are so close to gambling, like we saw with CSGO skins way back in the day, that why stop at kids? I mean, you don't let casinos just pop up anywhere. You don't let anyone sell their own brand of lottery tickets. So why do you let AAA game developers do it? When Kids play games designed for adults. They should be walled off from compulsive microtransactions. Maybe kids shouldn't play games when designed for adults. Again, removing personal responsibility of the parent, which is annoying. Game developers who knowingly exploit children should face legal consequences. Loot boxes are in-game treasure chests that contain random items. They're typically purchased using in-game currency or real-world money, and they become common sight in online video games in the last few years, generating millions of profit for publishers. I would say billions. Some critics say they're far too much like gambling and exploitative. Countries like Belgium and Netherlands have already taken legal action and forced publishers to modify and remove loot boxes from the game. The ESA pointed out in a statement to Variety on Wednesday that many other countries don't see the harm in them. Numerous countries, including Iceland, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, determined that loot boxes do not constitute gambling, said Stanley Pierre-Louis, acting president of CEO of the ESA. Well, you're the Entertainment Software Association. Of course you're going to agree with that take. Now, Senator Hawley's proposed bill, called the Protecting Children from Abuse of Games Act, if it passes, will apply new consumer protections to games targeted at children under the age of 18. It will define what those games are by using subject matter, visual content, and other indicators to those used to determine applicability of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA. Now, again, I'm actually not against this. I would have been 5 years ago when I think, and I stand by my statement saying, anytime you let the government get involved, things get worse. But at this point, I am very concerned, and I don't think I'm that far off the mark to say that I believe that game developers' best minds are not working on making better games. They are working on making better monetization systems. What I mean is, yes, EA, I talked about this in I got interviewed last night by some newspaper about microtransactions or something. And I said something along the lines of, the problem is the companies with all the money that could be doing the most innovation, like EA or Activision or Blizzard, they have their smartest people working on monetization rather than working on leaps and bounds forward in technology for the players. There's a seemingly endless well of cash that they're way more obsessed with than pushing innovation. Dry that well up a little bit, and maybe that means the gaming community will get some better video games. The protections will also apply to a wider audience where developers knowingly allow minors to play and engage in microtransactions. The bill will ban loot boxes with randomized or partial randomized rewards and will exhibit certain exploitative will prohibit exploitative pay-to-win mechanics. For example, developers won't be able to manipulate the competitive balance of a player title to encourage players to buy microtransactions and give them an advantage. This is good. I find it really hard to not get behind this bill right now. I wish our government wasn't having to get involved, but when you have, they go on to say, manipulating a game's progression system to entice players to spend money to progress won't be allowed as well. The FTC will be responsible for enforcing the rules if developers break them. The state's attorney general could file suits to defend the residents of their states. Hawley is not the first U.S. politician to propose loot box legislation. Lawmakers in Hawaii introduced a bill in February 2018 that aimed to regulate the sale of video games containing loot boxes. Two of the bills would ban selling such games under the people of age of 21. Other two would require publishers to clearly label games as having loot boxes and disclose odds of winning. I support disclosing the odds too. This is the way that the New Jersey enforces like claw machine rules. When they have so many machines that have payouts, it's very similar to loot box. They have to disclose the odds of winning right on the machine. If you look at those odds, okay, if you see you are like, here's the thing. I don't have any problem with people buying Powerball or lottery tickets because the odds are right on there. If you choose to ignore them and give your money anyway, that's your decision. You're an adult at that point. But in video games, there's really no disclosure of these odds. This has all been a largely unregulated space that has been asking for the government to get their hands involved in this for many years. I'm sure that the games industry has lobbyists and things like that in Washington, D.C., but I don't think that they're going to be able to ignore this too long. This is the second time in about a year that it's come up, and I am having a hard time not supporting this. Senator Maggie Hassan has asked the Federal Trade Commission to investigate the practice of video game loot boxes. That happened last year. The FTC plans to hold a workshop about the issue. Hey, Federal Trade Commission, holler at your boy. I'll be happy to come and talk to you. In press materials announcing the bill, Howley's team brought up the Activision game Candy Crush as an egregious example of pay-to-win microtransactions thanks to its $150 Luscious bundle, which comes with a whole bunch of goodies. This bill would likely apply to a host of online games that feature loot boxes and other ways in which players can spend money for real benefits. When a game is designed for kids, we talked about that, talked about last fall. As of 12/18, the EAS, the video game industry, sent over a statement shortly after the bill to say everything was okay. This is what most people say. People don't like this politician, but they're fine with the bill at this point because people are sick of it. Maybe it will actually force video game developers to spend a minute on making better video games. I don't know if it will. It'll probably mean that they're going to spend more time on figuring out how to monetize you as the user without microtransactions. You may see I want to think about in the comment section down below. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, sorry it was so hectic. The news dropped and I wanted to make this the 4 o'clock video. So if you did enjoy it, definitely drop a like on this video. And I'm interested to hear what you think this really means, because I think at the end of the day, this will shape the way video games come out. But I think you might see everything shift to a subscription-based service to make up the money. The thing is, with inflation, $60 for a title is no longer quote-unquote enough for these agencies. And they're looking for making not just some of the money, but making all of the money. And if they can't target whales anymore, that means they're going to target the rest of us. What this might mean is a higher price for video games. This might mean it'll be interesting to see. I think it would be foolish to think that this would just be an automatic win for consumers, because they're going to pass it on to us, the gamers. So I definitely recommend watching this close, and I look forward to reading all your comments in the comment section down below. I've got a big video coming out tonight at like 7:15. You're not going to want to miss that, so make sure you come back for that too. We'll talk to you again real soon.